The Viking Way, Part 1. 147 miles in 13 days from the Humber Bridge to Oakham in September 2024. This is the story of my amazing 13-day adventure on the relatively unknown Viking Way, which opened in 1976 and runs for 147 official miles from the Humber Bridge through the Lincolnshire Wolds and Lincoln, and finally ends up at Oakham on the western edge of Rutland Water. It joins the Yorkshire Wolds Way with the Hereward Way. After always thinking that setting foot in Lincolnshire would be boring, this trail has surprised me greatly because it is anything but. The Wolds are sparsely populated with small villages, isolated farms and unspoilt market towns. The area was first settled by Neolithic farmers, who were later followed by the Romans, the Vikings, medieval monks and World War II Allied soldiers. And Lincoln itself is a wonder to behold. The logistics involved in planning and walking this trail were complicated in the extreme because much of it runs through isolated areas and there is very little public transport or accommodation available in the area. I loved walking this trail. This was a milestone walk for me because on completion I realised that I had joined up all my steps in a continuous line from just across the Scottish border at Kirkgetholm and all the way down to Land's End. Day 1. Hessel to Barnet-Bieler Wold, 21.7 miles. This is the official start of the Viking Way on the southern side of the Humber Bridge near Barton upon Humber. I started my walk where the Yorkshire Wolds Way ends, on the northern side of the super scary Humber Bridge at Hessel. Fortunately, the fog obscured the views, so I was able to control my fear of heights and feelings of rising panic as I launched myself across the monster bridge. The Humber Bridge, seen from the start of the Viking Way. The bridge is over 1 mile long, and the walk from Hessel Station to the official start of the trail on the other side added around 5 miles to my projected 17-mile first stage of the walk. On my way after crossing the bridge, which is visible in the background behind this rather spectacular weld plant. Weld makes a yellow dye, which, when mixed with woad, makes Lincoln green. Creative Bee Hotel in South Ferriby. After that, I didn't take many photos because it kept raining and the countryside was very flat. Just one overgrown, lumpy field edge after another, which turned my first 21-mile day into quite a challenge. Finally, the end of my long day in sight, with just another half a mile to go to my B&B for the night. Day 2. Barnet-Bieler Wold to Nettleton, 12.5 miles. Here is the trail as it leaves Barnetby and starts climbing up into the Wolds for real. The trail then started to become much prettier and more interesting compared to my previous day's slog. I walked through lots of charming little villages strung out along the northwest escarpment of the Wolds, with Viking names like Bigby, Summerby, Searby, Omby, Grasby and Clixby. By means town or village in the Scandinavian languages. Swallows gathering on the wires as I was leaving Barnet-Bieler Wold, a sure sign of the end of summer approaching. I walked through lots of fields with beautiful wildflowers and sunflowers. Bigby's village sign. All Saints Church, Grassby. I met a church warden later on during my journey who told me that Lincolnshire has 600 churches, more than any other diocese in the country. Calixby Church. Coffee in the charming old Roman town of Caister, which had a fascinating history, so I spent quite a bit of time exploring it. It also had beautiful private and municipal planting everywhere. Almost every house and street corner had gorgeous floral displays. Cypher Spring, a holy well in Caister. The energy there was almost palpable. A piece of the old Roman wall in Caister. The church of St. Peter and St. Paul, Caister. I walked past this beautiful garden called Aquadel in Caister, which has won loads of awards. My Airbnb for the night in Nettleton, very cosy and fully kitted out. Day 3, Nettleton to Ludford, 17.2 miles. Sunrise view from my cosy shed in Nettleton. My day started with 1,200 feet of gradient. I never realised that Lincolnshire had hills, but the wolds are actually quite lumpy, rather like a mini version of the Yorkshire wolds. Lots of woldy stuff on the first stage of my day. It drizzled all morning and then rained more heavily in the afternoon, but that did not dampen my spirits, and I was nice and cosy in my rain gear. Horsetail, which contains high levels of silica, making it ideal for treating conditions such as cystitis, incontinence and bedwetting. More woldy stuff. St. Peter's Church, Normanby. When I opened the door to enter this church, I was immediately struck by how warm and cosy it was, and then I realised that this was due to the wall-to-wall carpeting. This was the first time I had ever seen a church with a full carpet. Maybe something that other churches could adopt to good effect. Stained glass window with a nod to Ramblers at the Ramblers Church, All Saints in Walesby. Tealby, such a pretty village where I had lunch in the church while it was pouring with rain outside. My reward after a long day in a cafe in Market Raisin. Day 4, Ludford to Goolsby, 14.2 miles. A pretty typical vista during the early part of the day with grey skies, drizzle and a wide open landscape. A Bronze Age round barrow called Grimm's Mound, which did indeed look grim. This is the site of a deserted medieval village called Biscathorpe, one of many so-called DMVs, or deserted medieval villages, in the Wolds, for a whole host of reasons, including the Black Death and enclosure, etc. The derelict church at Biscathorpe. I didn't hang around there because it had really bad vibes, rather like the evil energy at Nine Wells near Cambridge. I couldn't get away fast enough. The River Bain near Donnington-on-Bain. Greater Bindweed, a beautiful, slightly toxic thug in the same family as Morning Glory. Inside the church in Donnington-on-Bain, where I had my lunch to escape the drizzle. Day 5, Goolsby to Horncastle, 13.6 miles. A typical section of the trail as I was leaving Goolsby. Once again, I didn't take many photos because it rained quite a bit. This was my final day in the Wolds, and there were some great views to be had from the high ridges, like this one. I love the name of this Portaloo company, seen in Belchwood, but perhaps they should have called it Turdis. My accommodation for the night in the thriving market town of Horncastle, which is a pretty little town, but it looked rather miserable in the rain when I arrived. Day 6, Horncastle to Bardney, 19.2 miles. Horncastle looked so much better in the sunshine when I continued my walk the next morning. St Mary's Church, Horncastle. Leaving Horncastle with a spring in my step along the disused Horncastle Canal, the old River Bain, which runs for 11 miles, linking the River Witham to Horncastle. Heading out into the Lincolnshire Fens. During the first half of my day, I walked along an old railway track and a sculpture trail called the Spa Trail. The artists have used wood, stone and steel to create the sculptures which reflect the wildlife and flora of the area, local associations with Viking raiders, and the famous botanist and explorer Sir Joseph Banks, whose family owned the Revesby estate near Horncastle. Some of the sculptures on the Spa Trail: Viking Longship, Nature Magnified, a Viking Milestone. I had a coffee here at the Tea House in the Woods in the incongruously located spa town of Woodall Spa, which is an inland Edwardian-style resort surrounded by pine forests. It is also the home of the National Golf Centre. The transition between this busy hub, with its spa hotels, stately mansions and bijou shops, to the surrounding fens was extreme. 12 miles into my day's walk, near the old railway station at Stixwold, I reached the River Witham, which flows from Lincoln down into the Wash along the isolated Witham Valley. There I met a couple of local walkers sitting on a bench, who regularly meet on Wednesdays for a hike. We had a long and very interesting chat, and they filled me in with lots of stories about Lincolnshire lore, and assured me that there are no dangerous mythical creatures lurking in the Lincolnshire fens. However, black shuck is rumoured to roam as far north from East Anglia as the Lincolnshire fens, and, like anywhere else in the country, Lincolnshire folklore has its fair share of hauntings and mystical beasts, such as the werewolf of Dogdyke, the Lindsay leopard, the shag foal, and the Lincoln imps. Like those elusive otters, these were all conspicuous by their absence during my walk. Another sculpture along the River Witham, and another beautiful field of sunflowers. Day 7, Bardney to Lincoln, 20.7 miles. The start of my day in Bardney, and heading further out into the fens. The ruins of Barlings Abbey, one of 9 pre-Monstratensian monasteries in the county of Lincolnshire, founded in 1154. Barlings Abbey. More typical scenery en route. My walk was never boring. Arriving in Lincoln after walking 20 miles. This is the Newport Arch, a 3rd century Roman gateway into the city of Lincoln. See part 2 for the continuation of my journey along the Viking Way and for lessons learnt.